The gavel's echo was the loudest sound I had heard in years. It was the sound of my past being legally erased. My grandniece didn't just steal my paintings, she convinced a judge they were hers, using my own fading eyesight as proof I couldn't possibly remember what was mine. There is a special cruelty in having your past stolen from you while you're being told it's for your own good. I spent my life surrounded by beauty, the rich resonance of my cello, the bold, confident strokes of the paintings my husband, Henri, collected. When the doctor said the light was fading from my world, I never imagined my own family would be the ones to switch it off. Isabelle and her fiancé, Julien, had been so helpful. "We need to create an inventory for the insurance, Aunt Sarah," Isabelle had said, her voice honeyed with concern. "With your eyes, we need to get everything documented." I had agreed, touched by their diligence. I sat in my armchair, a blanket over my knees, as they photographed every piece. I remember the flash, over and over, a strobe light illuminating the ghosts of my life. The court papers arrived a month later. They were a work of fiction, complete with forged bills of sale and heartfelt gift letters I had supposedly signed over the years, bequeathing my treasures to them. Isabelle held my hand, her grip firm. "Aunt Sarah," the judge agreed. "You're confused. You told us just last Christmas you wanted us to have the little landscape." I gestured to the empty space on the wall where Henry's favorite Pissarro had hung. "I said no such thing. That was your grandfather's favorite. He loved the light in it." Julien stepped forward, the picture of the sympathetic fiancé. "Memory is a tricky thing at your age," he said softly, the words like splinters of glass. "We're protecting you from yourself. And from any opportunists." The walls were bare. I felt untethered, a ghost in my own home, the familiar shapes and colors now just vague, gray smudges. The betrayal was a physical ache, a hollowing out that my failing vision only amplified. It was Mr. Albright who saved me. The retired curator of the museum Henri once directed, he was a man made of quiet precision and dusty tweed. He visited out of habit and found a house of ghosts. "Serafina," he said, his voice tight as he stood in the center of my ravaged living room. "The Pissarro. The small one. What about it?" I whispered, the words catching in my throat. "It was on loan. From the Laurent Foundation in Geneva. A permanent loan, contingent on the death of the last direct descendant. Henri never owned it." My breath caught. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, pulling out his ancient flip phone with a determined snap, "your grandniece isn't just a thief. She's an international one. And she has just entangled herself with one of the most litigious art foundations in Europe." This was the discovery that changed the battlefield. It was no longer a family dispute, it was a federal crime. With Mr. Albright as my guide, we launched a counterattack fought with paper and provenance. He contacted the Laurent Foundation, whose lawyers descended with the force of a thunderclap. Simultaneously, he brought over a high-powered magnifying glass and guided my trembling hands over the forged letters. "Look, Serafina," he murmured. "The font. This, Helvetica Neue, it wasn't standard on home printers 10 years ago. This document is a fake." The protected art in Isabelle's apartment was now evidence in a major international theft case. The district attorney got involved. Their assets were frozen. The local society pages that had once fawned over the young, art-loving couple now ran their pictures under the headline "Alleged Heirloom Heists." Cornered and facing extradition, Isabelle made her most vicious play. She came to my home one last time, no longer the concerned grandniece, but a cornered animal. She threw a worn leather journal onto my coffee table. "Aunt Sarah," she hissed. "This is Henry's journal. It proves the Laurent Foundation is a sham, built with art looted from Jewish families. He was a facilitator. A villain. Drop the charges, let us keep the art, or I will go public. I will destroy his name, the museum's reputation, everything he ever stood for." I felt the world drop away. To destroy Henry's memory, it was a pain deeper than blindness. But Mr. Albright, who had been quietly observing, simply picked up the journal. He ran his fingers over the binding, held a page to the light. A sad, knowing smile touched his lips. "The paper is modern acid-free," he stated calmly. "The binding is machine-stitched, a technique not used for this style of journal until the 1990s. And the looted pieces it references, the Rosenthal collection, were, in fact, purchased legally by Henri at auction in 1952. He spent a decade and most of his personal fortune tracking down the rightful heirs and returning the pieces to them. This foundation was his partner. Your journal, my dear, is a clumsy forgery. You've just attempted to slander a hero. The final victory was not loud, but it was absolute. With the Foundation's lawyers and the DA listening, Mr. Albright guided me as I called Isabel. On a recorded line, I asked her about the journal, and she, believing she still held power, explicitly described how Julian had found a forger online. Her confession was the final nail. Isabel and Julian were convicted on multiple federal charges. The art was returned. In a move that brought me to my knees, the Laurent Foundation, in gratitude for Henry's silent, lifelong heroism, formally gifted the Pissarro to me. I did not hang it back on my wall. I donated it, along with our entire collection, to the museum, endowing a wing in Henry's name where his true story would be told for generations. They thought my blindness made me weak. But it forced me to see what I had overlooked in the light, the true character of the people around me. To anyone who feels their strength is fading, remember, the most important things are not seen with the eyes, but with the memory and the heart. Trust that. It never, ever loses its focus. The quiet that settled after the trial was different from the silence of the empty house. This was a peace earned, a hard-won calm after the storm. The Pissarro was gone, now hanging in the newly christened Du Bois wing, a small plaque beside it telling a story of secret heroism, not just artistic appreciation. My home felt lighter, the ghosts now honored rather than haunting me. But a victory like that changes you. It sands away the soft edges, leaving behind something sharper, more resilient. I was no longer just Serafina Du Bois, the retired cellist with the failing eyes. I was the woman who had stared down a predator in her own family and won. The world, however, kept turning. And Isabel, even in her disgrace, was not finished. The first letter arrived a month after her sentencing. It was not from her directly, that would have violated the restraining order, but from a fellow inmate, a woman claiming to be a spiritual advisor. She is remorseful, the letter read. She speaks of a final piece, one not on any official list. A small sketch. She wants you to have it, to make things right. My hands trembled, but not with fear. With rage. It was a hook, baited with the one thing she knew I couldn't resist, a missing piece of Henri. Mr. Albright, who now visited weekly for tea and to read the newspaper to me, was immediately suspicious. It's a ploy, Serafina, he said, his voice firm. She has nothing left to lose. She wishes to draw you out, to force an interaction. Perhaps to beg for money, or to simply inflict one last wound. I know, I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. But what if it's true? What if there is another piece? A final secret of Henry's. This was the new battleground, not the law, but the heart. And Isabel knew it well. Mr. Albright sighed, the sound of rustling pages. Then we proceed with extreme caution. We do not meet her. We use intermediaries. We verify everything. We engaged a lawyer who contacted the penitentiary. Yes, Isabel claimed to have information about a small, unsigned sketch by Degas that Henri had kept hidden, its provenance sensitive. She would only reveal its location to me in a supervised visit. I refused. It was a trap. I felt it in my bones. Yet, the idea of it, a last secret from Henri, gnawed at me. It was the final strand of her web, and though I was free, I could still feel its sticky pull. The answer came to me in the middle of the night, a sudden clarity in the dark. I did not need to see the sketch to find it. I needed to remember. Isabel's forgery had been based on a kernel of truth, Henry's secretive work. What if this was the same? What if there was a real sketch, and she had discovered it during her inventory? The next day, I asked Mr. Albright to guide me to Henry's old study. I hadn't spent real time in there since his passing. The room was a time capsule, smelling of old leather and dust. Describe it to me, I asked Mr. Albright. Everything. Precisely. He did, with a curator's eye. The mahogany desk. The green banker's lamp. The shelves of art books, organized by movement and century. The large globe on a stand. The globe, I said, a memory flickering. Henri loved that globe. He was always touching it, spinning it. Mr. Albright guided my hands to it. It was a beautiful, heavy object, the oceans a deep blue, the land masses raised. My fingers traced the contours of Europe, the place of his birth, his early adventures. And then I remembered. A story he'd told me once, late at night, about a hiding place his own father had shown him. A compartment. My fingers, now my eyes, searched the brass base. I pressed, I twisted. Nothing. Then, my thumb found a nearly imperceptible seam along the equator of the globe itself. I pressed hard, and with a soft, satisfying click, a small segment of the northern hemisphere swung open. Inside, nestled in a velvet-lined hollow, was not a Degas sketch. It was a tiny, exquisitely rendered watercolor of a woman playing the cello. It was me. Young, vibrant, lost in the music. And it was signed, in Henry's unmistakable hand, pour mon âme, Sarah. Toujours. For my soul, Sarah. Always. He had never shown me. It was his private treasure, a testament to a love he held too deep for words. Isabelle must have found it, and in her venal mind, assumed it was a lost masterpiece, a final score. She had tried to use the ghost of our love as her final weapon. I held the little painting, its existence more valuable than any Pissarro. I had Isabelle's spiritual advisor sent a single, typed message. The final piece is found. Do not contact me again. The attempt had failed, but it had given me a gift greater than she could ever imagine. It had led me back to Henry's pure, uncomplicated love, hidden away from the world, meant only for me. I now sit in that study often. Mr. Albright reads to me, and my fingers rest on that little globe. The Du Bois wing at the museum tells one story of Henri, the public hero, the savior of art. But here, in the quiet, I hold the other story. The private man. The devoted husband. They say the blind develop a sharper sense of hearing. I think they develop a sharper sense of truth. Isabelle's final betrayal sought to exploit my love, but it only led me to its deepest, most secret source. The world is a blur of shapes and light to me now, but some things have never been more clear. The weight of a globe. The texture of old paper. The unshakable presence of a love that, it turns out, was always hidden in plain sight.